greatly improved since the 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, the OSHA regulations, the state regulations for the steel erectors, and that's what's brought us here. Now, we've got a lot of high-tech equipment in here, but that's where we can go ahead and we can do the distance learning to all of the satellite locations throughout Colorado and Kansas. And that's because because of financial restrictions. I think of a ½ contribution, and right now it takes a minimum of 54 cents. That's prior to moving in here. It'll take a little bit of time to be able to figure out what the minimum money's going to be on the calculation. Yes, sir. But you know, the thing is I feel very privileged because I know this has been a hard-fought battle from start to finish.
Oh, it has been, you know, but like any good thing, there's very few things that really amount to a lot that is handed to someone.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
It takes development, it takes skills and knowing what is needed and how you're going to develop it. And I look back, like visiting here the other day, and saying, gee, I wonder if I would have stayed with the apprentice program if we'd ever met this type of goal. I believe I had mentioned that in '78 I completed my master's degree, and Denver Public Schools was interested in me because they had few people in the construction trades that came about, you know, and competed at that much education. And then when the training center of our concept of building one was more or less put aside, and the bargaining agreement then stated that we would move to South Santa Fe. And also what hurt was the pipe fitters, I believe the electrical and the sheet metal, they built their own facilities then. They would not go out to that training center. And two, I felt, you know, it was time for a change. I'd been there quite a few years, and you know, there was still some bad blood that never washed off the table, you know. And so I think overall I probably did the right thing. It brought in new blood, Dennis, and then John here. And John has so many advancements. He was with the state, he was with the apprenticeship program, he was with the feds, and still is today.
Hard to employ me. Hard to keep me in job.
Greatly qualified, or he wouldn't have had these different opportunities. And like John mentioned, I believe John was one of the first instructors that I hired coming up through. But that was part of the plan. When I developed the instructor training plan and gave it to Opportunity School, and we worked it out. And we not only trained my instructors, but for the whole building trades. And then Johnny McKean had me train the other ironworkers in the district council. And of course, I had the opportunity to help set up apprentice programs throughout the district council.
Well, there's one thing that I'm the only person in this room that knows. Today, Jimmy was nominated and elected somewhat unwillingly to be the chairman of the Colorado Building Trades Training Directors Association.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell him how that started, Kurt.
Well, we started that too. We visited back and forth. I used to visit. But when I come on, the pipe fitters had a part-time guy. He was assistant agent. The plumbers started Jimmy Sparks. The carpenters started, he had a cane. What was his name? Ed Bedlake. Anyway, I visited back and forth trying to gain knowledge because they were full-time before I was, you know.
Yes, sir.
And so we met a few times, and I asked the pipe fitters. They had a building which later became part of DPS parking lot over there. They rented a small building in there, which was later destroyed, the local did.
Mhm.
But then going back, the pipe fitters and the plumbers were the first in Opportunity School that was granted a room. They bought the welding machines. So the school district allowed them to bring his welding machines in. And they used them sometimes during the daytime. But they were the fitters and the plumbers. But anyway, putting together a training class for the instructors, we started this Training Directors Association. And then we began to meet once in a while and then officially get started. And I was president a couple of times, one time for 3 years. And it was quite an honor. And we had communication within the training directors at the local unions. Never had, I don't think they ever had today.
They still may not have the same level of communications that the training
That
directors.
we used to have. And the other unique thing about the training directors, I believe yet to this day, you have more communication with the contractors than probably the business offices of many of them. Saying that in the right context.
Yes.
You're meeting with them on apprenticeship.
Yes, sir.
You're not meeting with them on jurisdiction.
No.
But you have communication with them at least monthly, you know. And so many times within the local unions, there's a jealousy against the coordinators that develops from some of your contacts. But I don't believe there's any way to eliminate that. Basically, you do your business like John does his now with the feds, or the school does theirs.
Yes, sir.
And you remain friends, and you have to work together.
Well, I remember when I hired on to the apprenticeship in 2000, because I was already teaching welding as a welding instructor out of down south out of Pueblo, and from 1998. And we got the program reestablished in Pueblo because the work had been off so bad that everything had just kind of went to the wayside.
Yes.
And we got the welding facility back through the community college in Pueblo. And when I hired on in 2000, I remember as an assistant coordinator, John had informed us that building relationships was going to be, you know, the task at hand for the most part, so that we could keep the communication, the lines of communications open. And the other instruction was, don't let the job consume you. And that is a never-ending, that's a never-ending struggle, because this job is just, it's not really a job, it becomes part of your life. I mean, it's just another facet of your life. Yes, sir. I mean, you know, when I sit there and I heard you say a while ago that you know, you didn't want to blow your horn or whatever, you know, about what your accomplishments have been. We enjoy a lot of benefits from the hard work and accomplishments and the trails that you blazed.
I appreciate it.
And I mean, that's on a daily basis, sort of. And I can't stress enough that the membership of Ironworkers Local 24 and Ironworkers International as a whole, I don't really fully appreciate the impact you've had. I mean, yes, you were one man, but as one man, you've been able to make a massive footprint. A massive footprint. Which is, I mean, it's positive. You know?
Well, but people all over the world do that.
Yes, sir.
And in the
But
building
I don't
trades-
know them. I know you.
And in the building trades, so many of us first coordinators or apprenticeship people, whether it's the fitters or the boilermakers or carpenters, we all had similar experience. And we all tried to, you say, fight for what was needed. You could observe what our needs were. And you take from working in the gang, or maybe I was foreman a few times, but then going out and observing, seeing what people can do, and see how they communicate, how they talk. And I found that many apprentices, of course, going back years ago, high school education was not a big thing. And John, did I still have in class, first of the class, you'd have about 10 spelling words.
Vocabulary is what you call it.
Vocabulary. What was to do was to enhance their communication skills,
Yes.
to develop some of their vocabulary, which was terrible, and to learn to spell. I was so amazed when I first came into education. People's basic education is really very limited
Very
here.
basic.
Discussed so much today. You know, what's going on in these schools? Well, some basic things are not being taught. One, I don't believe the regular writing, you know, they print a little bit and then use these, what do you call them, cell phones and things to communicate. They do not really express themselves. They have no talking skills. Their vocabulary is very poor because they abbreviate so many words. And two, they're not required. Emphasis is not on basic, you know, your communicating skills, going back again to the alphabet and or to your basic numbers and working by hand, some basic math problems.
Well, the basic math is still a struggle.
However, I would almost guarantee, unlike myself, you never had to take a course in balancing your checkbook to be an ironworker apprentice. Herb did that. And we couldn't quite figure out what the whole deal was. And it wasn't at all about your check. And it wasn't all about that. It was practical application of numbers. We did mechanical drafting, which at the time was all there was. There wasn't AutoCAD or some of those things. So the technology, again, changes the face of what you do, but it doesn't change the basic thing you do.
Exactly.
But it changes the method you do it. A total station, for instance. We used to think it was a really heavy thing when we'd get the theodolite, because that was a really advanced piece of equipment that only the millwright could use. So to go from a level to a transit to a theodolite was the end of it all, and now that turns out not to be all that much. And in 20, 30 years from now, the total station is going to be a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
They'll have robots some way or another that'll have figured out how to get no human being involved in the layout of the course field. So it all evolves, and people have to, I think, adjust. You know, you evolve or die. But if the ironworkers don't keep moving on, there's a much worse situation than a new facility. The whole thing will be gone if you don't make these risky judgments about the things you do. And that's what you two have been talking about this whole day, really, is the risk. It's a little different risk in Herb's time, I think, and in your time, because I also remember union meetings where you had to be careful you didn't step in anything before you went out, or you'd be arrested for mayhem. Those days are probably gone. But the fight goes on. It's
Yeah.
just a different fight. And it's in a different manner and a different venue. So
The struggle's
Well,
taking
I
a
hope-
different form, but it's still alive and
Still a
well,
struggle.
yes.
I was going to say, excuse me for interrupting, that I hope that you write up a sheet of general basic information telling the world about your program here, about your new facilities. And I hope that you have sufficient funds. Put it in the Denver Post. Broadcast it. And I hope you will invite the governor, the mayor, and out here, I don't know if you're in Adams County or Denver. I think you're Adams.
Adams County under
But
Denver.
Invite those people
Mhm.
in Denver and invite all the local unions, all the apprenticeship, the business managers, their international men in here. Fight them all. Spend some money. But tell the world about this. This is such a great place.
Yes, sir.
well, and it is. And we're back again and come full circle, I think. But in this day and age with YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, communication is the thing. And if you don't get your message out there, and you almost have to push your message anymore, they're not just gonna glance on it, they're gonna be looking for things. So if you can push something in their direction, it enhances everything. The city and county of Denver probably has no real clue, or your representative or your senator, about what goes on. And when they know, they will use that to enhance their position. And when they do that, the person that hears it will do the same thing. So, like it or not, that's the world of politics. And Denver should be proud of this facility.
Yes, sir.
So it's something that, regardless of party affiliation or anything, this benefits the contractors who have always been participants in this.
Oh, you've got
Without
that
the
down.
contractors, this wouldn't have happened, and we all know that. Sometimes I forget to say that because I get so involved in the training component of it. But the contractors are every bit as an important part, maybe more so, depending on their perspective.
Well, as I recall, as I stated, it was the contractors who brought that to the table.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, there was only health and welfare and pension. That was the main thrust. And I believe it was Zimmerman who brought it up. Midwest Steel kicked in, and Midwest Steel was the largest employer at that time. But the AGC controlled everything. The steel erectors were affiliated with the AGC, but you actually, the final negotiation was with the AGC, not steel erectors. They tried to change that for years. And I believe it's finally changed now.
Oh, yeah.
You're dealing more with and directly the people that hired.
Yes, sir.
But we always had at least one person on, what was his name?
His name was Duke Nielsen.
Well, he was not a contractor.
Well,
He was a hiree of them.
yeah, he was there.
He was their spokesperson for apprenticeship. But I'm thinking that one contractor, Fuzzy Orr, Young Orr, was on the program.
Yeah.
And they hired iron workers. In fact, I think Joe worked for him quite a bit. Joe Filippini. And Fuzzy Orr was his dad. But Young Orr, and then he died of cancer. And then Zimmerman always been involved. I'm surprised Zimmerman still is, but I heard some tales that they had a big conflict, work jurisdiction or something, and so that fell apart. But I do believe, as in other trades that I've been associated with, contractors are very important people.
Yes, sir. Well, and but with the amount of money and the funding that's spent here and the amount of effort that's went into the development of the apprenticeship program as a whole, and as it has evolved, and we've evolved to this place where we're at. It doesn't. This isn't just a benefit for our members and the contractors. It is the community as a whole, or the state as a whole, with the amount of people that we can actually deal with and effectively train. I mean, that's the beauty of this, is because you can actually make, some positive effects in people's lives across the state. And there's not a lot of people that can actually boast that.
Well, no, and I'm going back to the training directors meeting from today. The Building Trades Training Directors Association, mostly because of Mr. Schiller, was able, through Opportunity School and Herb's position there, to make available an associate's degree for people in the building trades to take the work that they've done, be recognized by higher education as valid experience. This all came about during Herb's shift at Opportunity School, where he pushed the 120Bs and the whole process to recognize the 42 hours of learning that takes place in an apprenticeship program. And that was a big step. Up until that time, there was vocational education and higher education. Herb's efforts sort of melded the two, where a person working on the field, going to class, doing all these things, The experiential learning is every bit as important, but it's harder to quantify because they don't take a test on Math 101. So that was an awful lot of hard work on Herb's part and all the training directors at the time to get that pushed through the community college system, finally up the ladder to where it went to. And that's all a result, and it's fairly recent history, isn't it, Herb?
You gotta pat John on the back again. He was there, he kept the effort going, and there were many, I shouldn't say many, that's not a good vocabulary. There were a few training directors objecting to that because they were concerned their trade was given more to the non-union. Or the non-union could come in the back door.
Didn't happen, but it was a possibility, and I can remember some of the fights about, first of all, an apprentice, as we all know, everybody in this room served an apprenticeship, which is pretty damn impressive. It's hard. It's very hard to be a successful apprentice, and sometimes we tend to forget about that when you're drawing up your schedule for learning and your class schedule and things like that. Monday night, what the hell's the matter with the guy coming in on Monday nights? Except there's Monday night football. And people have birthdays and anniversaries, and they have children, and they have school. And you put all that together, and you still go 240 hours a year, and that's right. A million things. It's not for everyone. It certainly is not for everyone. But to be equated with no education like the construction trades has always been viewed as sort of, well, he can't be this, let's just make him a construction worker. I think we're getting a message out that that isn't quite what it seems, that it takes a lot of dedication. The pipe fitters always come to mind when it comes to training. They have a 10,000 hour program. They go 1,800 hours of school in those 5 years. That's another year of their life that they've spent in the classroom. And we all do it to some degree. So where you draw the line, I don't know. I've always been a proponent of keeping it as minimal as possible so you get the results you want, because I understand that people have other obligations. And sometimes the reality of it doesn't work that way, does it? But
How many years are you?
In Local 24, I have 13 years in Local 24.
No. How long is the training program now?
Well, it's a 3-year, this is a 3-year apprenticeship program.
Okay, I was promoting a 4-year program.
And I understand that.
The International agreed with me somewhat. They did have a 4-year in Chicago, and they had one in Philadelphia. I have another little story to tell about Philadelphia. We had an apprentice, I don't remember his name, whose family moved to Philadelphia. And so to move an apprentice, I don't know how it is then, now, but it was then, it was a complicated affair. The apprentice could not legally move unless the apprenticeship committee where he was going would accept him. In the old days, the International used to, just go with that local. But anyway, so I sent a letter to Philadelphia explaining what situation, and this person would be coming to their office and etc. And anyway, the boy went there and started going to class and etc. And a phone call come in about 6 months later. And D, I think I have D, didn't I, about that?
yeah, you did.
And
His
someone
secretary.
talked to me and said, had this young boy down to the apprentice committee and he stands at attention. He has a haircut and wears clean clothes all the time. He speaks yes or no, sir, to the instructors. And they said, well, Mr. Shilroth made him do that. And they wanted to know, he said, are you ever considered moving back east? I did receive a letter asking me if I'd be interested in coming back.
Wow.
It's kind of a joke. I should have kept the letter and hung it on the wall, but it was. They appreciated that, and I also enjoyed hearing from different locals like when John began teaching, or we had young men who did California or back east. I always had good reports.
Yes.
I always had good reports. I never had someone say, gee, I wish you'd leave it, you know?
Well, and on that same sort of thing, a little reminder that safety is probably critical. And the way things have changed from that, the Philadelphia thing brought it up from Chicago. I didn't boom out too much when I was a journeyman or an apprentice, other than the state, kind of a three-county kind of boomer guy. But the safety issues that are issues or would be issues now weren't then. I think the standard method for getting to the top of the column, if you had any pull at all, was on a headache ball. Right?
Yeah.
Ride a load, ride the load up to where you're working with it, do all that.
The first
Safety.
beam up, we used to, the two connectors would ride the beam up. And they'd swing over to a column, and you'd get off on one, and it'd swing over to the other column.
I tell you, the safety issues, I think that, the one that strikes me the most, I have a lot of family members that have been construction workers, and the amount of infirmity in old age from working construction. And I was thinking the other day when I was at the powerhouse at Platteville, how did we protect all that expensive equipment when we were welding and cutting around it? We would go out to the trailer, get a huge chunk of asbestos, flop it down on there, make sure it was all good and straight and everything until the air was just white. And then we find out later that may not be a real good idea. But at the time, it was just a work practice. The safety with cranes, the required OSHA 10, OSHA 30, the 500s, all the things, the third-party certifications that you have to deal with, that I never had to in 10 short years, are just crazy. In my mind, there are so many of them. The arm's length third-party certification has been real good for the third-party certification people, but not so much for the poor worker or the guy putting on the training. And I can't imagine what that training would cost today. I know today, the small OSHA class, the 10-hour, the 30 is about $800. So the individual, the investment in the people in the program is probably much greater than it was during even my time, 10 few years ago. And Herb's much the same, because it was all human capital, or a lot of human capital that went into that, and a lot of safety training. That's the thing I remember the most about the apprenticeship is, first of all, the definitions of things. When is a beam and not a column, and you know, the functional things, and the safety.
Well, let me ask you this, Herb. How many, if you can, right off the top of your head, can you remember apprentices that got seriously injured on the job through their apprenticeship? I mean, was it the numbers fairly high, or?
Now, there was that one brother, what was his name? It was either with Rich or Steel Placers, an apprentice, maybe a second-year apprentice. And they were unloading the truck. And as a crane picked off this wedge-mount rebar load, you know, bundle, the other one rolled down and caught him underneath.
But
You remember anything about? I was still down at the hall when that happened.
I can probably, in my memory, I can remember 2 apprentice deaths in that whole time. One was at the Denver Art Museum where the fellow stepped through a hole.
Yeah.
Wasn't John Tonis, I don't remember his name now. I'm afraid.
Yeah, he lived out there in Wheat Ridge.
Right. And the other fellow was the fellow down in one Denver place working for Durr where the column fell. And those are the only 2 that I remember in all the years. And I do remember the incident with the injuries, another thing altogether. But 2 deaths. I think it's pretty amazing, given the hazardous nature of the work, that few number of fatalities is what really occurred. And it's a testament to the people and the training.
Well, but that's what I tell a lot of people when I go to the different career fairs, and when I talk to people that's interested, is that with Iron Workers Union as a whole, as an organization, we were born out of death.
Mhm.
And I don't know how, the origin of the carpenters and the millwrights and the electricians and sheet metal workers and the insulators, how they came about, but we were an organization that basically came together and organized out of death to have an association because there was such a high fatality rate. And I know that they've made it exceedingly difficult on our steel erecting contractors and our membership to have the utmost training to try to keep that to a very minimal. And I mean, and that's the constant struggle, keeping everybody educated.
Well, safety, is a full-time job. I don't care where you're at, what you're doing. Driving your car, it has to be there. It just has to be there. And if you're conscious of it, I believe you'll have a better chance. And
I
to
think
do that,
that's
you
the
have
hard
to
part.
provide the training.
Yeah. Has to be reinforced all the time. It's as good hands as all the ironworkers are, the instructors. I don't know how many Jimmy has now, but when you can bring a collective group that have had safety issues happen on the job every week into a classroom and share the things that happen with 15, 20 guys, the chances of the exact same thing happening are going to be pretty slim. There are going to be different variations on a theme, always. There's always crushing injuries. There's how many ironworkers are named Lefty or whatever it might be. How many of them limp? How many have bad backs? How many all? Without the safety, they'd be fatalities and stuff. So, safety is, for our craft, I think, or for the ironworkers craft, very, very critical. Oh, what have we missed?
The good and the bad.
And Jimmy.
I cannot think too much of too many bad.
No. I thought about this after our little informal get-together last week about the people that I know in apprenticeship at all different levels. Apprentice, instructor, coordinator, all those things. All these are people that want to help people, much like education. So I think it was kind of a natural thing for you, particularly her, to move to education. Because it isn't so much the teaching and the learning part, it's this crazy desire to help people who you sometimes don't think deserve any help at all.
Yeah.
But you keep on because it's the right thing to do. And I know I'm still giving back because I tried a lot of things. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to work for Xerox, I did a whole bunch of other things. But none of it was quite as gratifying as being a teacher. Because you do get feedback, and you get some bad stuff back too. But overall, when you step back and look, and you can recount the names, and I can still recall 200 or 300 names, and they're all working, they're making a living of some kind, their families are okay. My family was okay. That's how I put myself in school, my daughters through school, my grandkids. I still, to this day, am an ironworker. There are a couple of things that never change. I'll always be a Marine. I'll always be a dad. And I will always be an ironworker. It's one of those things, there are so few ex-ironworkers or ex-Marines or things like that, but these things stick with me, and I think because you have the opportunity to give back, and you recognize that opportunity. Because anybody who does instructing, and anybody who does it in construction trades as an apprenticeship, teacher, coordinator, whatever, you're given a whole lot more than you're getting. So,
You're taking.
I'm off the soapbox.
At our CV reunion that I attended there in Kansas City, it was so mentioned, just about identical to what you were speaking of. You'll never be without a CV. You'll always be a CV.
Well,
A
I
CV
believe
is
that.
always there to help you.
Yeah, I believe that.
And your education, your children, your job, especially if you've been on a job for 35, 40 years, as most of us older have that, and you fellows are getting into. It's been a good life. You don't have a sunny day every day, nor is there not a muddy path to walk in. But it's great. It's great. Go ahead.
Well, you know, when I hear that, I just sit there and I think about the path, you know, that I've chosen, and I had 5 years Navy Seabees, and I got out, and it was a really bad economical time in America. But it was in the Intermountain West, because the West Coast and the East Coast were really booming. But I was from here in Colorado, and I'd already traveled half the world, and I wasn't inclined to travel much beyond the confines of Colorado. But I wound up working, you know, some form of construction or another since about 1975, and now I've been in Ironworkers Local 24 13 years, and I would have loved to have got in right out of the service, but it was so bad that I couldn't quite get in. And it's taken me different places, but I've learned, and I've been in the ironworking trade for over probably 28 years, and been very proud to become in a membership of Ironworkers Local 24, and to work with this apprenticeship, because that's what I was basically doing, was giving back when I became an instructor. Somebody took the time to show me, and I learned, and being the old Boy Scout that I am, and the CB that I was proud to give back, because it helped all of us.
Yeah.
You know, it helped all of us. So it's been a very good experience.
Well, I wish to say thank you.
Yes, sir.
John.
Thank you, Art. It's always a
All the
pleasure.
best.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.